Ambassador Taeyong Cho, thank you very much for your time this evening.
It's my pleasure, Scott.
With the death of Kim Jong-Il, is the Korean Peninsula a safer or less safe place, do you believe?
Well, it depends on how we handle the situation. And of course, the death of Kim Jong-il is a huge event. And North Korea has been in existence for 66, 67 years, only had two leaders. Now the second leader died after 17-year rule. So this is a huge event. And also, add that with the fact that North Korea has 2 million plus conventional armies and nuclear capability, chemical weapons. So I think it's a pretty serious situation. But I think we are confident that my government, along with our friends and allies, US and Australia included, are handling the situation very, very capably. And I think I'm confident that we'll be able to make the situation safer for the future of Korean Peninsula.
Before we look at that international reaction and how the peninsula may be made safer from an international perspective, remaining within North Korea, how do you think Kim Jong-un, the successor, will hold his country together, or at least give the appearance of holding his country together?
Apparently, there is no opposition to the succession of Kim Jong-un. It has been the case since last year. But there is an objective fact that his father, Kim Jong-il, had 20 years to be groomed as a leader, while Kim Jong-un has less than 2 years. I think so. The challenges that Kim Jong-un faces from now on is much greater than the challenges that his father faced.
How do you think he will confront those challenges, and how successful, from what you know, do you think he will be at confronting those challenges?
Well, one said 10 years ago that North Korea is one of the most opaque countries in the world. And then when it comes to North Korean politics, I think that's the aspect most opaque to outsiders. I think we'll have to watch very closely whether Kim Jong-un could hold together his fragile regime. And it is our job to make sure that whatever happens in North Korea wouldn't have a negative security implications in the region.
Ambassador Cho, you mentioned before about the avenues the world is looking at to make the peninsula safer. Foremost there, how does the world re-engage with North Korea on the issue of nuclear arms? Who leads off that attempted re-engagement? And when is the appropriate time to do that, do you believe?
I think this is a very critical time. I believe that we were very close to resuming six-party talks, and then we are very close to making sure that enrichment activities might stop in North Korea. And then we are very close to deal, and this happened. I think my government, as well as Americans and others within the framework of six-party talks, keep our collective fingers crossed, and we are going to re-engage North Korea as soon as this mourning period is finished.
In terms of re-engagement and in terms of less isolation to North Korea with this transition, how important is the role of China?
Well, China can play a huge and critical role there, and North Korean economy is increasingly dependent upon China, and North Korea is increasingly dependent upon China's political support for the leadership succession, as we saw the couple of developments that were unfolded last year. So I think China has a very important role to play. I think China has a fundamentally similar interests as Korea and other countries, in the sense that China doesn't want instability in its neighborhood. So in that sense, we are looking in the same direction. But I think perhaps it's better for all of us to put a little higher priority on the need to denuclearize the North Korea.
Given that there is this transition going on, this new ruler, as you point out, is presiding over something very fragile, and he may want to stamp his authority. How willing do you think Kim Jong-un would be or could be to re-engaging with six-party talks?
Well, as I said before, leadership change comes very far in between in North Korea. So this is a very sensitive and delicate time in North Korea. One thing I don't want to do from my position is to put a strain on, negative remarks about the leadership change in North Korea. So I think trying to read tea leaves, that is the North Korean politics, has always been a difficult task. I think what is important for all of us, Korea and Australia, is to make sure that we make every possible effort to preserve stability on the Korean Peninsula and not to make any actions and remarks that can aggravate the situation that is already tense on the Korean Peninsula.
Ambassador, there's an unnamed source in a report saying that North Korea wants to revisit the 1953 ceasefire. Have you heard anything in regard to that? What do you make of that?
I think it's in our common interests, in principle, in common interests, to move from the armistice stage to the permanent peace stage. It's in everybody's interest. My government publicly says so, along with U.S. government and many other governments. So this is nothing new. If this is something that North Korea wanted to discuss, we have already expressed our willingness to engage in conversation with them. But I'd like to add that the stopping North Korea's nuclear ambition is very, very important. That should be our highest priority.
Further to that, from all that you know and all the work you have done as a diplomat regarding North Korea, which is extensive, personally for you, what worries you most? Where do you hold the most hope in regard to the future on the Korean Peninsula?
Well, I think the death of Kim Jong-Il actually presents tremendous challenges as well as tremendous opportunities. So first thing we have to do is to make sure that the peninsula is stable. But I think moving forward, I think we'll have to look for opportunities to achieve a lasting peace, and furthermore, I think achieve reunification on the peninsula. I think this is an opportunity, and we have to make best use of it.
How confident are you that those opportunities will become reality?
I think unification and the peace is something that everybody, every Korean, North and South, and everybody who are living in the neighborhood want. So it's a matter of pulling our collective wisdom to make it happen. And I'm sure that we need all the help and assistance we can get from our friends, including and especially Australia. As a matter of fact, my foreign minister had telephone conversation with Minister Kevin Rudd yesterday. My minister had only time to talk with 4 ministers. So I think Australia is one of the 4, and that's very gratifying fact for me as ambassador in Canberra.
What sort of role do you believe Australia could and should play as having a regional presence here in trying to bring about some of those goals that you outlined?
Australia has always been a principled and staunch supporter of the peace and non-proliferation on the Korean Peninsula and in the neighborhood. So I think Australia can help us by continuing to engage in a straightforward conversation with North Korea, and also by engaging with us and United States and others to pool our collective wisdom to find the best possible way to improve the situation on the Korean Peninsula.
Ambassador Cho, finally, you've recently taken up your appointment in Canberra. From your perspective, given that Australians and South Koreans have fought beside each other, so there's that history there, Korea is Australia's 4th largest trading partner. In light of all of that, why do you think it is that there's not a greater perception, a wider understanding in Australia of the Australia-South Korea relationship?
I think Korea deserves better awareness and understanding from the Australian public. I come up with the term two-speed relations here because when it comes to government relations, the friendship between the leaders, our common efforts to tackle the issues like climate change and regional security, we are very close partners already. And as you said, we are the number 4 trading partner and number 3 export market for Australia. But these facts I found have not been well known to some of the Australian people. So I think it's my challenge for the next 3 years to make sure that the public awareness of my country in this, public awareness of Korea in this country will probably go hand in hand the substantive relations that our two countries are enjoying today.
Ambassador Taeyong Cho, I wish you well with that challenge, and I thank you very much for taking time to speak with me tonight.
Thank you very much, Scott.